Yeah. So we are reading Aghora, the left hand of God. We are on chapter 2, page number 65 of the book and 35 of the PDF.
Kali and Kali Das. Ma taught me well. She let me know about some of my previous births, the ones that mattered most to my present existence. But she didn't want me to learn everything at once. For a play to be well acted, sometimes it is better that the actors have no idea of what they are doing. In this way, they act out.
So over here, what is she saying? She let me know some of my previous births, the ones that mattered most to my present existence. So we've been here many times. We've been here tens of thousands of times. Okay. It's not that we just have one or two, four previous births. That is my also my issue when we do past life regression. We really don't know which birth are we going into. So that is where again the guru comes in to be able to guide you to the birth which is relevant to what you are experiencing in this life. As we had discussed previously in Celestine Prophecy also and in this book, that before we come here, in the before life, we decide what we want to experience in this life. So we set an agenda. We set we set an agenda for ourselves. We set a curriculum for ourselves that these are the things that I want to experience, right? Now, many times we want to experience something which has a connection to certain events or experiences I've had in a previous birth. So now, if I can understand what happened in that particular previous birth, it makes it easier for me to understand what is happening in this birth, right? So that is why he said that that she let me know about some of my previous births, the ones that mattered most to my present existence. But she didn't want me to learn everything at once. This brain has a capacity, and if it gets overloaded, you'll go into shock, you'll get a stroke, okay, or you'll go senile, you get seasonophrenia. All those things will start happening to you. So that is why even in the excursion workshop or in the other Monroe processes, we have this term called click out. When something does not need to be processed at the conscious level, it gets processed at the subconscious level, which has a much bigger capacity of handling data than our conscious mind. So that's why he says, and then he says over here that a play well acted sometimes is better when the actors have no idea what they are doing. So many times what happens is that if you do not know what is going to happen, then you act spontaneously. But if you know what is going to happen, then your actions are tempered, right? So many times when an actor goes in stage, they have these plays actually where the people do not know what they are going to say. Again, I was reading this book called Blink. There are many theaters where these actors are on stage and someone from the audience gives them a topic, and they have to do the play based on whatever the topic is. And one of the rules is that whatever the other person says, you say yes. So if the other person says, you are a donkey, yes, I am a donkey and I carry weight. Now, as soon as I say that, the other actor needs to pick it up. Now, if you break the rule of saying, if you don't accept it and you don't say yes, the entire play goes fud. So now, if you look at it from the life perspective, how many times are we saying no and how many times are we saying yes? So many times what happens is that if we don't know what's going to happen, it allows us to say yes if we are not operating out of fear. Okay, so very clearly, sometimes it's better that the actors have no idea as to what they are doing.
In this way, they act out their parts with greater spontaneity and feeling. When you know who you are, it changes everything. Kalidas's poetry is taught in schools and colleges all over India, but only a few people know the story of his life. even though he was India's greatest classical poet. He was a great devotee of Ma, as his name suggests, servant Das of Kali. For 9 incarnations, he worshipped Ma and he ended each life by sacrificing himself. He would cut off his own head and let the blood spill over Ma's feet out of his intense love for her. In his 10th birth, he was born amazingly stupid and horribly ugly. He couldn't even take proper care of himself, much less worship the goddess Kali. He was a woodcutter, and since everyone knew what a dud he was, would take advantage of him by buying his wood for 2 rupees when the other woodcutters would sell the same quantity for 10. But he was happy to have plenty of customers and he had enough to eat, so he was satisfied. Now, the king of the country had a daughter who was as clever as she was beautiful. And when the time came for her to marry, she announced that she would only marry the man who could defeat her at debate. Anyone who tried and failed would be executed. Many princes saw her face and fell in love with her, and all of them were beheaded when they failed to out argue her. The king lost his temper one day and called for his minister and told him to find for him the stupidest man in the kingdom. Just to teach her a lesson, he announced, I am going to marry my daughter to him. The minister knew better than to protest, so off he went in search of the stupidest man in the kingdom. It did not take him long to locate Kalidas, who was busily chopping off the branch on which he was sitting when the minister walked by. He told Kalidas that the king wanted to meet him. Kalidas said, Why? I haven't done anything wrong. Why should I meet the king? This is the way he used to talk. He was something like a fakir, always in his own mood. The minister said, No, no, the king wants to meet you to present you something. When Kalidas replied, If the king is so anxious to meet me, he can come here, the minister said. The minister ordered the 2 soldiers who had accompanied him to grab Kalidas and drag him to the palace. When the king saw Kalidas, he was amazed that such a stupid man could exist. He told him, I want you to marry my daughter. Kalidas said, Why should I marry your daughter? There are plenty of other girls in the kingdom to choose from. The king was not amused and said, If you don't agree to marry my daughter, your head will be chopped off. Kalidas shrugged his shoulders. Ka- the king was not amused and said, If you don't agree, marry my daughter, your head will be chopped off. Kalidas shrugged his shoulders. During the wedding ceremony, the princess was veiled so she couldn't see her husband properly. Afterwards, she went to the bedroom which had been prepared for their honeymoon. It was a beautiful rainy night with a little light drizzle falling as she looked out the open window. It was the rutting season, and many of the forest animals were giving full throat to their mating calls. She saw her husband sitting quietly nearby, and thinking him to be shy, she considered how to awaken in him the urge for love play. Just then, a camel delivered his peculiar rasping mating call, and she coyly asked her husband, Who is calling for his mate? Her idea was that he should realize she wanted him to come to her like the animals do for sex. The Sanskrit word for camel is ushtra, but even that single word was beyond the ability of poor Kalidas to pronounce, and he replied, Utru, Utru. His wife lost all her erotic intoxication in that instant and thought to herself, Can my father have really done this to me? Then she said to Kalidas, You can't speak Sanskrit, you can converse only in degraded language, and you couldn't even comprehend the reason for my question. Get out, you're not fit for me. For the first time in his life, Kalidas felt hurt and insulted. It was all Ma's doing, of course. She was calling him. He was so disgusted with his condition that he left his house and wandered into a Kali temple. He started beating his head against the feet of the image, remembered the influence of his 9 previous births, until a few drops of blood fell onto the goddess's feet. That was enough. The goddess Kali herself appeared outside the temple and banged on the door. Let me in, she cried. I am Kali. Ask for anything. Kalidas got up and stood behind the door so she wouldn't be able to open it and shouted, I don't trust you. He had suddenly become vaguely aware of his previous births, and now he was afraid that Kali would again refuse to save him. Kali said, no, you don't understand. Trust me. Kalidas said in a hurt voice, no, why should I trust you? I trusted you 9 times before, and look at me now. Ma said sweetly, trust me, just open the door a crack and see that it is really your Kali. Kalidas said, I will stick my tongue out the door, that's all. And when he did, Ma struck his tongue and immediately he received divine speech. Not only that, but he became tall and handsome. You may not believe that, I don't care, but it's true. From that time forward, Ma was with him 24 hours a day. Spontaneously, a beautiful verse in praise of Ma fell from his lips. When Kalidas returned to the palace, no one recognized him, but it was easy enough to gain entry to the king by reciting a poem. Back then, kings loved poetry, so Kalidas recited a poem praising the great beauty of the princess. He described the wrinkle in her hips when she turned, her high projecting breast, the curvature of her waist, her navel. Kalidas is famous for his similes and metaphors. So he compared each part of her body to an appropriate image from nature. And during the recitation itself, the king's daughter happened to come onto the woman's balcony behind the throne. And when she beheld Kalidas, she instantly fell in love with him. When Kalidas lifted his eyes and saw the princess, he didn't bother to speak. He expressed his emotions with a look and a smile. What subtlety there is in the old ways of expression. When the princess saw this, she could no longer control herself and she said to her father, I must marry this man. He is the only man in the world who is fit for me. The king indignantly replied, do you realize what you are saying? You are already married. The princess said, I don't care. I must have this man. Imagine the surprise in the court when Kalidas said quietly, I am your husband. Kalidas thanked the king for giving him his daughter in marriage. The king in turn offered Kalidas vast lands which were politely declined. Then the princess came down to her father's throne and in front of the entire assembly kissed her father and said, I thank you, father, for having given me a husband worthy of my qualities. And the king, heaving a sigh of relief, was vindicated for marrying his daughter off to that poor idiot Kalidas. Kalidas left that kingdom and went to Ujjain, where he embellished the court of King Vikramaditya. Do you know his poem Meghdut, in which a lonely yaksha angel pines for the wife who has been separated from him? Kalidas based that poem on the experience of his wedding night. In his previous condition, he had been unable to express all the misery of his rejection. But thanks to the grace of Ma, he took his unfortunate experience and converted it into sublime verse. If he had not been ignorant in the beginning, he would never have been selected to marry the princess. He would never have been driven by desperation to pound his head on the rock. and he might never have been saved by Ma so he could win the princess back. Ma wanted him to live for a while in the world and provide us with his sublime poetry. Suppose he had realized her right away, would he have had the idea to get married and live a householder's life? Never. The bliss of living with Ma is times greater than all mundane pleasures. She wanted to entangle him partially in her Maya and then to save him, so that while he was working out his entanglements, he would amaze the world as her tongue, her mouthpiece. At other times, Ma will let someone worship her for years until circumstances force that person to relinquish the bondage of Maya, and then she comes to him. It is all her play.
So everything happens for the best, provided we allow it to happen. And also, what is the state of consciousness that we are going into it? So a simple person at times can really expand spiritually because the person is constantly saying yes. They're not analyzing things too much. They just get into doing it. Okay, so it can work that way also. And of course, your prarabdh is definitely a play away.
Vidyaranya. About 600 years ago, in the time of Vijayanagar Empire in South India, the prime minister of one of the kings was named Vidyaranya, who was a great devotee of Ma. It came to pass that in the course of time, Vidyaranya was ruined. He lost his position and was reduced to almost nothing. All his power and most of his wealth were taken away, and as a result, his family began to hate and abuse him. He became so fed up with everything that he decided to renounce the world and become a hermit. He went out into the forest and made a pledge to this effect. Then he worshipped Ma one last time. At the height of his power, the zenith of his glory, he worshipped with the best items available. Solid gold dishes were set aside for Ma's use. Priceless jewels adorned her. She was offered only the choicest foods. Now, reduced to poverty, he could do nothing but prepare unleavened bread out of mud and offer it to her, saying, I'm sorry, Ma, now I have nothing and I can no longer worship you as I did before. Suddenly, Ma stood before him and said, Speak your wish. He looked at her quizzically and said, Ma, what are you talking about? If you had really wanted to give me something, you should have arrived 5 minutes ago. Then I could have accepted something. Now I have vowed to renounce worldly things, so I don't want anything, not even you. I only want God. Ma smiled at him and said, Don't you understand yet? Close your eyes. When he did, he saw mountains and mountains of ashes and a small pile of something that was still emitting smoke. He still couldn't understand, so Ma explained it to him. You have been worshipping me for many years, she said, and by my grace, all the karmas of your previous births have been burned to ashes, except that little pile, which is all that remains. If you had not lost your position, you would never have renounced life. So it was essential for you to be ruined. Do you see?
So now, when we look at ourselves, whenever we surrender, whenever we can't do anything about something, we get stuck in a situation. That is when we turn to the Lord. That is when we turn to prayer, right? When we can't do anything. Before that, the ego is in play. So over here also, his ego would have been in play. He was very well to do, etc. The only time till he was not totally ruined did he really connect with Ma in the way that he needed to connect.
Vidyaranya did full prostration to her and immediately went into a state of divine intoxication. Afterward, he wrote a famous Sanskrit treatise called Jivan Mukti Vivek. That is what grace can do for you. You see, When you have learned your lesson and have only the desire for Ma remaining in your heart, she will come to you.
So
Then you have a
you have
chance to
learned your
achieve.
lesson. That means whatever you need, you have come here in this world to do, you have learned it. So again, over here, the patterns start playing, right? Whenever there's a pattern, means there's a lesson for you to learn.
Then you have a chance to achieve. But when Ma does come to you, don't ask for grace. Grace is hers to give, according to her own sweet will. You can't get it on your own. Ask for compassion, learning, gyan. And when you get gyan, you will know how to obtain grace.
So again, knowledge is very, very important, but it is the theory. When you put it into practice, it becomes an experience, and that is what leads to wisdom. So very nicely is said that when Ma comes to you, ask for learning, ask for growth, ask for gyan, ask for knowledge, so that you understand what is happening. That knowledge is extremely important for the understanding process.
Sarvanand and Purnanand. In the entire world so far, only two people, when Ma came to them, asked for Sarva Vidya, the knowledge of each and every aspect of Shakti. One was Sarvananda Thakur of Bengal. I can't tell you about the other. Sarvananda was a Brahmin, the son of a court astrologer of the king of Tripura. The astrologer was able to get a son only after long years of penance of Shiva. And the boy was actually something like Shiva incarnate, but he didn't realize it until later. One day, when Sarvanand was still a young boy, his father took him to the court to show him off to the king, in hopes of some largesse because of his precocity. There was an assemblage of astrologers there in the court debating on the lunar day. Actually, it was a new moon day, but when Sarvanand was asked, he opined that it was the full moon day. This drew guffaws from the conclave of astrologers and a slap from the embarrassed father, who was concerned about his position and how to save his face. He forgot that his son was the gift of Lord Shiva. Would he have dared to slap Shiva? The boy became angry and ran home. His old servant Purnananda saw the condition of his young master and, wiping his tears, consoled him a bit. Then Purnanand sent the boy out into the jungle with a knife to gather palm leaves onto which he would copy part of some astrological texts and teach the boy himself. At that time, all writing was done on palm leaves. Sarvanand climbed a palm tree carrying the knife and let his anger boil over by slashing at the palm leaves. Meanwhile, nature had sent an ethereal being of a very high order to look after Sarvanand. This Siddh took a physical body and then created an illusory cobra and set it up into the tree in which Sarvanand was sitting. When the boy saw the snake, all his anger focused on it. So you want to bite me, he said to the snake. Okay, but I'm going to cut you first. How do you like that? And saying these words, he hacked the snake in two by rubbing it against a sharp palm leaf. He then threw the pieces down at the base of the tree. Now the Siddha was sitting there, and when he felt the blood and flesh of the dead cobra fall onto his matted locks, he said, what's this? Come down here. The boy descended, expecting the worst, but the Siddh merely stroked his head and said, I know all about it, my boy, and I want to help you out. Using the snake's blood, he wrote the details of the type of Shav sadhana which would please Ma if properly performed. Then Sarvanand returned to Purnanand and told him the whole story. Purnanand read the details and then told him, "This must be performed on a new moon night, which is tonight. Let's do this. We'll go together to the smashan. You kill me and then sit on my corpse and do as I tell you. Then Ma will come and ask you what you want. Tell her, please revive Purnanand and do as he says. That way, Ma will appear to us both." That night, they went to the smashan and the boy cut the old man's throat and sat on his body, repeating the mantra given to him. After a few repetitions, Ma appeared and asked the boy what he desired. He told her as Purnanand had instructed him. She revived Purnanand and he too saw her. Then she asked again, "What do you want?" Purnanand replied, "All the so called great astrologers ridiculed my boy for saying tonight was the full moon night. Preserve my boy's honor." Ma smiled, and from the nail of her little finger a ball of light emerged, which was so bright that for miles around it seemed a full moon. All the astrologers back at the court were wonderstruck. Sarvanand was just a child, innocent of the ways of the sadhana, but he was so overcome with love for Tara that he told her, "Ma, you have been so kind to show me your form, but I want to see you in all your forms, all your manifestations, because I want to know you completely so I can love you properly." Tara smiled at him again and agreed. Sarvanand had no idea of the meaning of Sarva Vidya, but by asking for all the forms of Ma, Sarva Vidya was what he received. If nature wants you to succeed at something, a situation will be created whereby you will request the right thing knowingly or not. Purnanand actually became Sarvanand's disciple and became himself a great Pandit and scholar.
So over
It
here,
was, in fact, Purnanand's work that inspired the late Justice Sir John Woodroffe of the Calcutta High Court to introduce the subject of Kundalini to the West under the pen name of Arthur Avalon.
so over here, if
And
nature
Sarvanand,
wants you to succeed at something, a situation will be created whereby you will request the right thing. So, where does what we do actually come from? So, in the Vastu program, previously I used to draw a line and I used to ask the question, does this line have energy or not? Now, the question is, where did the line come from? So, the answer used to be previously it came from our mind. We had to think of it, right? But where did the thought come from? It came from below the line. And where did the thought come to this below the line part? It came from the divine. So, over here it says, if nature wants you to succeed at something, a situation will be created whereby you will automatically request the right thing unknowingly. So when you allow yourself to get into the flow, when you allow yourself to really connect with the universal consciousness, then technically whatever you do will start being the right thing. Again, looking back hindsight, many times you'll find that the worst times in your life were actually the best times for your growth. Okay. So this is what is being said here, that we don't know what is right and wrong for us. But when we trust, then whatever is right will automatically start to happen.
and Sarvanand, he became a householder and then one day he disappeared. No one knows what became of him. Normally, you will not even think to ask for Sarva Vidya. That is part of Ma's play. But even so, when she gives you knowledge, you become the expert, the gem in your own field. The motherhood of the goddess. Sarvanand was very lucky. Ma came to him while he was still a boy, so he automatically treated her like a mother. Only one person out of millions develops a desire to experience the motherhood of God. There is nothing higher than the worship of the mother because only the mother can show the child the face of its father, just as a child is taught by its physical mother the identity of its father, grandparents, and other relatives. Even so, the Divine Mother shows her child the face of its father, Shiva, the universal soul. That is why you should try to succeed at the worship of God with attributes first, and your chosen deity will then lead you on to the attributeless, ultimate reality. Who is the source of all attributes after all? Ma.
So, first we need to understand the manifested. Then only we can shift to the unmanifested.
Not all Aghoris treat Ma as mother, you understand, but I think it is the wisest to do so. Always remember to control any Shakti properly is not easy, and to control cosmic Shaktis is almost impossibly difficult. To catch hold of Kali by the hair and tell her, "Come to me right now," is rather dangerous. That makes it a contest of wills, and unless your will is stronger, Kali will frighten you into insanity or heart failure. Not because she hates you. Oh no, she never hates anyone. Though, of course, no one likes to be ordered around. No, she loves you and wants to play with you, but if an elephant wrestles with a mosquito, what will be the outcome? If you treat Ma like your wife, and I'm not saying it's impossible, I knew one saint who did it, who projected his worship onto a statue of Ma and worshipped her as his spouse, and eventually succeeded. And then one day, find a human woman who seems attractive to you because of some connection from a past lifetime. You might suddenly find yourself projecting your worship onto the Maya, onto the flesh and blood instead of into the essence. Because your worship has built up so much energy, your descent into Maya will be all the deeper, and who knows how long it might take you to drag you out.
So when you go high, you fall also faster. That's why it becomes very, very important to be consciously aware of what is happening and not start allowing ego to come into the picture. We'll find these stories of so many saints and rishi munis, etc., who really fell because ego came into the picture.
The best way to treat Shakti is as a mother. It can save you from so many karmas also. It can save you from so many karmas also. If you look at all women as your mother, would you ever think of raping or cheating or deceiving one? And if you see the Divine Mother in all beings, can you ever intentionally injure anyone? No. And this automatically draws you away from the cycle of action and reaction. Ramakrishna Paramhans saw the Divine Mother in everyone, including even his own wife, and look what it did for him. You can go into all the world's religions, but nowhere can you find anything so sublime as our vision of the motherhood of Virgin Mary. But the worship of the mother has been perfected only in India because India is herself a mother. India has sheltered so many foreign races and religions, Jews, Zoroastrians, Christians, Muslims, etc., and has allowed them to flourish in their own ways. Has any other country ever done this? Because of this, the cow is the symbol of India.
So over here, it says Christianity has to some extent with the worship of the Mother Mary. Okay, but that also a part of Christianity. Total all Christians don't worship Mother Mary.
The cow is the perfect mother. She has four teats, one for her calf, one for the guests, including birds and animals, one for use in rituals, and one for her master. The milk is automatically divided into four equal portions. Everyone is provided for, and the cow is passionately devoted to her calf, just as a real mother must be to her child. Sometimes the mere sight of the calf makes milk flow from the cow's udders, not drip, flow. I have seen this more than once when I owned a dairy. And if the calf dies, the cow refuses to give milk. Not like our water buffaloes who can be tricked with the head of a calf on a stick. The buffalo is the symbol of tamas, stupidity, dullness. The cow is pure sattva, mental brightness.
So again, that's what the point is. The cow's milk is good for us. वो H2 cow या जो भी बोलते हैं, and but the buffalo is milk is not really good for us. So that time also they knew it, right? So they used to have the cow's milk, not the buffalo's milk. And also the milk flows from the mother's breast when the child needs the milk, when there is a connection between the mother and the child, the cow and the calf, the milk actually flows. So when the child needs the milk, the mother's milk is developed in the body.
And not just buffaloes, even your western cows will give milk whether or not the calf is still alive. When I always say that this is the fundamental difference between East and West, I am not just talking through my hat. What is so great about giving milk? All animals do it. The greatness in our Indian cows is that they give milk only out of an outpouring of love. That is the value of cow's milk. Won't at least a little bit of that love come through into the milk? It must. That emotion separates cows from other animals. So, how are we wrong to worship cows? We are not worshipping the hide, hooves, and tails. We worship the essence. A few years ago, I read in the newspaper that an American cow suddenly devoured 5 dozen baby chicks who happened to be playing about in front of her. No Indian cow would do that. Indian cows mother little animals.
So now again, what has also started happening is that cows are being fed crushed bone of other cows. So when the slaughterhouses, when they're slaughtering, and that is what led to the mad cows disease. But the Indian cow will only have grass. It's not going to eat meat. But nowadays, cows abroad, they're actually being fed meat also. So that becomes a huge problem.
You know that Lord Krishna was called Gopala when he was a baby. Gopala literally means protector of cows. There are many esoteric meanings to this word, but even the obvious meaning is beautiful. Gopal was such a lovable little baby that all the cows in the vicinity loved him more than they loved their own calves. This is why I always say that you should treat God as your mother. The baby is the best controller of Shakti because there is no desire at all except for the mother. And therefore, the mother will be perfectly continuously attentive to the child. Always sit in the mother's lap. When you get out of her lap and try to protect yourself, she says, "All right, go on. Go ruin yourself. How can you take care of yourself? You cannot.
So
The law of
here,
karma is
Shreya,
too big for anyone to tackle alone."
one second. So over here he says, when you get out of her lap and try to protect yourself, she says, all right, go on, go ruin yourself, right? So again, when we are going into these expanded states, if you want to do something, they are infinitely compassionate over there. They're going to let you do it your way. So when you don't listen to the guidance, they step back and they actually allow you to make the mistake, which is a good thing in some ways. But if we can connect to the guidance, then automatically we get onto the fast track. This I've seen when we take aura photos. I've seen in pictures of people's aura photo that there are many spirits around them, but they are not in communication. So they are not communicating with them and getting the help and support that they could have got if they connected to those uh, the helping spirits. Okay, so this becomes important here, that they will not force you to do anything. You're going to make the mistake, and then when you go into your life review, once you transcend this, you are again going to compare yourself. Again, there's no judging, there is no judge sitting there. Okay, you are going to see your own life as to whether you, how much of a percentage or how much did you actually manage to achieve what you had set out as an agenda before you took this life. So you are going to make that comparison. And when you're not listening to divine guidance, you tend to slip out of the path much more, the path that you had destined for yourself.
But if you stay in the mother's lap and always rely on her for everything you need, she will always provide it. Can any real mother ever neglect her child or not try to make it happy? As long as you treat Ma as your own mother, she will treat you as her own child. How does a mother know when her child is hungry? It cries. Whenever it cries in a particular way, the mother knows. Yes, time for feeding. I know this from my own experience. When I am really angry, disgusted with the world, Ma comes to me and taps me on the shoulder, as it were, and says, "Forget all about that. Do you know?" And she proceeds to teach me something new, something I had never dreamt of, something so amazing that I become speechless and forget my anger completely. What compassion! Was there ever a mother such as she?
So again, I'm reading this other book where it says what is the distinction or difference between pleasure and joy. So pleasure is momentary, that you just you have a good time doing something, that's it. But when is it joyful? When there is growth involved in what you are doing. So over here, it clearly says that mother will teach you something new and take you out of your misery. So the point is that you're shifting. Whenever you're learning something new, you're growing. Okay. And that is what is important. So anything that you're doing, if you're not growing, then technically it could be just a waste of time, or you're just enjoying. So you're stagnating. The idea is to engage in growth all the time. So the hence the question, when was the last time you did something new? That becomes important over here. Okay. The other thing is that over here, how does a mother know when her child is hungry? So there's a research done actually where they have mapped the various muscles in the face, and I think there are 200, yeah, 235 odd muscles, and how the muscles are working will signify what you are doing. And this guy, he can actually predict exactly what you're thinking and doing depending on the muscle in the face which is moving. So now, if I can move the right muscle, I can create that particular emotion also. It works both ways. Okay. So it's a fantastic process. How does a mother know that the child is hungry? Because the face will indicate that the child is hungry, and the mother instinctively knows this. Now, if you can train yourself to get these nuances, then you really know what is happening with everyone around you.
When the baby is not crying, however, its mother knows that its little tummy is full and she does not bother about it. It is the same way in the world. As long as you are quietly enjoying your life as a human, Ma thinks, well, he is satisfied. Let him be. What use does he have for me? And when you decide you are finished with life and want to get out of the unending cycle of birth and death, then there is only one thing to do: scream, cry out, demand that Ma should come and take care of you. And that is the only way that Ma will ever come to you. You have no desire her much more than anything else. And there are so many obstacles to that in this dark age, in this Kali Yuga.
So now what is happening over here? If you are not calling out, if you're not looking for things, if you're not wanting to make that connection, if you're not operating out of gratitude, then your growth gets stunted and then you get stuck in the circle. Okay. So you're operating satisfied. You will get up in the morning, you'll eat, you'll do this, you'll go to the office, come back, eat, go to sleep and come back. Okay. So you're going round and round in circles doing nothing. When does the growth come? When you call out, when you want to learn more, you want to grow. That is when the support also comes to you. So you allow, again, effortless action, where action is effortless, but the intent is set that I want to grow. That becomes very, very important over here.
But if you can identify yourself with a newborn baby, then what desires remain? A baby is too innocent to be aware of and any but the simplest and most essential desires. In that state, there is no question of temptation. If you gave baby a choice between a chocolate and a diamond, which will it take? The chocolate, of course. A diamond has no value for a baby. And if you learn that the world has no value, you will never be tempted by anything, and you will be able to avoid all the obstacles which crop up in Kali Yuga. But only a baby can do that. That is why I love the baby Gopal and the baby Jesus so much.
So a baby is totally innocent. Okay. It will go for what it thinks it needs. And that is true for all of us. We will always go for the thing that we value, that we perceive as valuable to us. Right. So what are you thinking is valuable becomes so important. So again, watching our thoughts becomes important. What are you really valuing in your life? What is your destination? What are you really looking for in life? That becomes important. Are you looking for material stuff? Are you looking for spiritual stuff? Are you looking for evolvement? Or are you looking for just having a pleasure of doing something? So again, are you looking for joy? And true joy only comes when you're growing, when you're learning, when there is a transition, there's a shift in the state of consciousness. There is less chaos in your system. That is when you really experience that joy, that bliss. But again, the question comes, what are you really looking for? And that is what we need to introspect on.
And if you learn that the world has no value, you will never be tempted by anything, and you will be able to avoid all the obstacles which crop up in Kali Yuga. But only a baby can do that. That is why I love the baby Gopala and the baby Jesus so much. You know, we Vedics believe that the same Rishi who incarnated on earth as Ram and later as Krishna also incarnated as Jesus. We take Jesus as one of us. But look what has happened to Christianity, to the beautiful teachings of Jesus. They have slaughtered so many millions in the name of Christ. When Christ preached that one must always turn the other cheek, but Jesus, his eyes, and the image of the mother and child, the baby Jesus playing with his Shakti, it is so sublime. Christians are just such fools to have received such a teaching and then to make such hash of it. But this is the thing, as Crippling said, East is East and West is West, and never the twain shall meet. In a way, he was right. We Easterners have only emotion. Sorry. We Easterners have value only for emotion. You Westerners, like your cows, are basically materialistic. Of course, there are exceptions, mind you, but when nature herself has created such differences in people, how can the one race understand the other? It takes a lot of effort.
So again, Christianity also, they had the Crusades, right? You have nowhere has it been told that Hindus went after people converting them. Okay, it's never happened. But all other religions, and especially the Abrahamic religions, they go in killing sprees. They actually kill people, and the Muslims and the Christians have really gone after, the Muslims ka jihad ho gaya and the Christians ka crusades ho gaya. A lot of killing happened during the crusades, during the witch hunts. Okay, a lot of killing took place. You want to stop here or you want to continue?
Let's stop.
Okay, anyone, anything? This was pretty simple today.